And we are back for our MTT night. We are still having 2 real MTTs, and then we are having 5 180 mans to go. And we'll see how it turns out. Out from here on. So the 180 mans, they are nearing the money, all of those, or they are in the money already. So there should be some nice bubble action to come later on. That's an interesting situation on this $8 game when there is a sitting out on the big blind, because then it makes a lot better to raise from UTG, because the big blind is the position that's most likely to call, so it increases the value of stealing all the way around. And Kriksa, what do you think about the players that came to this tournament at the last minute? They are getting, I think, 10 big blinds when they come in so late. So I think that when they are getting 10 big blinds, it's going to be hard for them to beat the rake. So I think that they are most likely that they would be better off registering at the start. But if you think that you can beat the rake even when you late rake pretty late, then just go for it. But that's going to be the $109 question, that can you beat the $9 of rake if you are getting in the tournament with just 10 big blinds. Even though I hit the 3, I don't like my chances so much. I think this would have been a shove if this Bengt Kassler wouldn't have shoved already before me. King 10 off is going to be a shove. It's going to be on the edge, but I think it's going to be good. It's not something that I would smile and go for it, but it's something that I know that it's going to be profitable, so. And we are slightly unlucky to be running just against 1 better. Of course, it doesn't count if it's 1 better or if it's 10 better. You know, is 10-9 off from button a good shove top left or some reads on players, I don't even remember, do I have the table in here anymore? If it was this table. I'd say in general, when it's about 10 big blinds, there are a lot of players paying antes, and there are not that much, or not that lot of ICM implications, but I think that the players will think that general players will think that there are a lot more, because it's going to be really close to the bubble, so I think we are going to get enough fold equity with our shove on that situation to make it pretty profitable. In the bottom left, I don't believe that this Bluis is having anything there, and I think that I can get the pot often in a cheap showdown. But I think the 10-9 off is also, it's a spot of like where real ICM implications and the implications that the general player will feel, because it's going to be really close to the money, I think they are going to differ a lot. With the Jack-9 suited, we are going to bet for value, and when we got raised, that isn't the nicest spot to be in, especially with the Queen hitting. He bets so small. I don't think it's going to be a bluff. I think that's going to be a really strong hand. So on the flop, when opponent just min re-raises me, then I think that it can still be a crappy hand. But when he min re-raises me and then bets for pretty much min bets the turn, I think that he's going to be likely to have a really good hand. I like set good hand on that situation. And Neo said that this bluff equity stat is weird. Do you use that thing? Normally not that much. The bluff equity stat is that if you would have a 0 equity after you bet, how often your opponent would need to be folding with that bet size you are currently having in percentages. It helps in some spots. Usually I think the pot odds is a way better stat to have. But mostly I like the Stars Helper for these history boxes, when I can see on exactly what kind of line my opponent has taken in the hand. It really helps a lot during multi-tabling. Even though I hit an ace there, I'm not that happy. especially from an under the gun raiser. That's going to be a slightly nasty situation. I think on the flop also I'm pretty close to being beat, but there is a lot of cards that are giving me extra equity. Extra equity in the hand. Kill for Fun, it's a program that you can get 1 month's free trial, and it's between 30 to 50 bucks, I don't remember. And as Neo said, that's one of the interesting questions in poker, that how did I end up in this situation? That will have a difference on your ranges, so depending on how did you end on some situations, so. I think in here when the deuce calls, I'm pretty much getting crushed by his range. Even though the big blind is disconnected, which is great for my equity. Kill for Fun Stars Helper. Now we are at 3 tables. This is slightly an ICM decision, because it's quite likely that an opponent will get out of the tournament before that. In this situation, I think a general tight reg will not play back at me with a range wide enough that I could call with ace-9 suited. It's pretty much either this hand or the next one, and I think that when this is an above average hand, it's going to be this one rather than the next one. And I'm getting crushed by his range. This is probably something that you are getting used to already. That's an interesting 3-bet by Queen Jack off. I don't even think it's that profitable, but interesting nonetheless. So, would there be players that are deep in the tournament number 1 billion or deep in some other, preferably PokerStars tournament, that I could take on the rail? Yeah, basically that's what I thought as well, because he's always going to need to beat me to get any money from the pot, because I have more than 1 big blind already. And there are still something like 4 guys behind him, and he's having 7 big blinds, so he's not that desperate. So of course it worked out for him, but it still isn't good. Even if it works out. Like, not every hand that works out is well played. And this might be the end of my tournament number 1 billion. Because if somebody ships on me, I'm going to go for it with Ace King. It's a nasty flop because it hits so well on general opponent's calling range on the big blind. Nasty. It just hits so well against well for an opponent that calls from the big blind in general, so I think that he's going to have a piece of that flop pretty much no matter what. And there will be so little that I beat in his range, so just gotta fold even if it's Ace King. And Paisteli asked, would you have pushed if it would have been something like 7-5 Jack Rainbow? I probably never would have pushed because if you are looking at the stack sizes, we are still having like 2.5 times the pot left, so I wouldn't be shoving, but I would have min betting. Min betting probably, if it's something like, you said that something like 7-5 deuce or something like that. Because then it's not going to hit the opponent that well, and we are getting those pots pretty often. In Sunday Storm, opponent opens 2.5x. Probably 3-betting isn't good enough against this kind of opponent, but still the price is really good when there are 9 players paying the antes. I think just that his range is going to be really tight. If I would have hit a flush draw or if my opponent would have checked, there would have been an opportunity for me to win the pot. Or there is like an opportunity for me to win the pot because I hit so well on the flop, and there are plenty of good flops for King 10 suited, and there are still opportunities to also bet him out of his hand if he doesn't hit. And Paisteli asked, if he goes all in, would you call? It depends on how aggressive I think my opponent is. I think against that opponent I wouldn't call because I think that he would have a top pair or good pocket pair. Pretty much if he shoves over. If you call King 10 suited and you hit a king or a 10, what next? I'm checking next. Next on that hand on the table. If I would have hit king or a 10, because then it's giving my opponent an opportunity to to bet for a weaker hand on the flop. And also, if I'm checking, I want to have strong hands in my checking range in general as well, because I think that opponents are going to be more likely to betting those or betting pretty much too wide in position in those situations. So then I'm getting more out of the tens or king, pair of kings or pair of tens in that hand. If I check and let the opponent that has already raised pre-flop and told him he has a good hand. I don't see that much value in going for a donk bet with a 10 as a top pair. I think then I'm having pretty good opportunity of isolating myself against mostly stronger hands, and also if the opponent shoves, then I'm going to be in a tighter spot. I probably need to call if it's 10, but even then when I call, it's going to most likely be against either 2 overcards or a higher pocket pair. And Marcus Y, I'm trying to find out from the Poker Star 7 on how can you find a player here. Find a player. Yeah, there is Marcus Y, and he's marked as a reg already, so you'll notice him, and there is 19 players remaining in the short stacks. And there is 45 places paid, so it's in the money already. Although the money isn't really that big, but the game is already in the money, and there is $300 for the win. Yeah, Morse code, there are the keyboard shortcuts, but you'll never remember them when you need to. So and if you look at Marcus Y's situation, he's 10th, so he's in the middle of the stacks. Oh, you can even see how the stack sizes have gone up and down for every player. Well, probably not that useful, but Danny's MTT reg at my table just unhid himself from player search and started a 27-cent MTT to 2 table. In general, I think that the opponent is going to open pretty tightly, especially as a silver star there. But I'm going to give him some credit, because I think that when he opens on a middle position and has been quite tight, that he probably does have a better hand than my king queen suited, and if I 3-bet shove, he won't be folding often enough, so it doesn't leave me that much of options. But of course, with the king queen suited, we can hit quite nicely. Nicely if we call, and we are getting a really good price on a call. So we don't have to have a lot of equity against him to call. And of course, we are nearing the bubble. It doesn't change my game, except probably to be a bit more aggressive. I think in Sunday Storm there are plenty of players that are satellited in or playing the like hyper satellites for their points. So there are a lot of players that the min cash is big monies and they are going to stall for it. And as we can see, Exhibit A for you, someone stalls with all of his time bank in the Sunday Storm when there are 500 places to the money. Oh well. Now it's like nothing's happening on the tables when I have been used to the 8 or more tables for a while, so now there is time to look at the opponents. King Jack suited is slightly interesting because I think that if we are min raising this, we can't. I think like this is going to be profitable as a shove, but if we min raise, we can't call because the opponent ranges will be a slightly tighter. So I think this is going to be a hand that plays better as a shove, even though we are having slightly larger stack depth than usual. To be shoving. So in that spot I would be raising a polarized range, so I would be raising those hands that I can happily raise call or raise fold, and then I'm going to be shoving the hands that are profitable as shoves, but I can't raise call or they won't have better equity to raise fold. And King Jack suited is going to be smack in the middle of that range, so in the Sunday Storm, I thought that the opponents are going to play more scared, like this LLBR is probably very scared at the moment. But it seems like there are a few players on my tables that are signing to the no fear school of poker players, so it's going to be interesting. Do we find out the great spot to shove, or is the bubble over before we get a decent spot? It's like usually the best time to grow your stack when you are close to the bubble, and the bubble is pretty close to meaningless compared to the stack sizes already at play. But if you don't have the cards and if you don't have the opportunities, then it's going to be a bit harder. This guy's name is slightly familiar from somewhere. There's Supernova, so I'm probably not in the best of company here. This Ace Architect looks to be a tight player from Kazakhstan, so I'm going to be min-raising this if it comes to me folded. Because this Ace Architect seems to be a pretty tight player. But when there is even one caller, I don't think that I can then profitably do a small raise here. And Marcus, why, yeah, I have been looking at your situations there, that when do we see a hand there, but nope, not yet, not yet. Now we see a hand. 5s against Ace 8. Crap. Well, we saw at least one hand. And now for me it's the situation to think that, do I get my opponents to... Which way I'll make my opponents poo more? Do I shove or do I min-raise? And in this situation I got 3-bet by jacks and jacks on the flop, so nothing to do anymore. $24.15 for Marcus Y. So now it's going to be the final table, not the final table, but the final table of this session. So, and it's going to be a Sunday storm. So, and if I get a huge stack here, then I can open some new tables. But if I don't get a huge stack here, then it's going to be just over. And actually, I noticed on the on PokerStars, when usually I would have started this kind of session with a lot of hyper satellites because of the 2% rake, and even though you start with 10 big blinds, I think that you can beat the 2% rake. But then I noticed that, oh well, there are tournaments that start with 10 big blinds with a huge ante, so the ante-adjusted big blinds are something like 6 ante-adjusted big blinds, and they are raking it for 5%. So it was like, what's the use of these hypersats anymore? I'm finding it really, really hard to play those hypersats profitably. Even though I win a seat on one of those, but it was a hyper satellite with FPPs. And I think that we are in the money in the Sunday Storm, because there is something like 700 tables going on, and there will be one player that will be eliminated. For sure. And Neo asked a really important question. Do you like to listen to music when playing, and what kind of music? If I listen to music while playing, it's going to be some metal or something like that. Usually something aggressive. Or then an audiobook or something to break the monotony of grind somewhat. The hand for hand it takes for ages in this Sunday Million. I don't know, there should be something like what can you do when you are in hand for hand in a Sunday storm and it takes 5 minutes for all the hands to complete. Finally. And if it's going to be still 6,300 players remaining and this is the next hand of hand for hand, then it's going to... then it's going to suck. I think with these two guys that are going to, or have played pretty tight, I think that there will be a lot that I can shove on this position. Actually 5-7 off is going to be like on the edge of the edge. But when there are two tight players behind me, then it's going to be pretty wide that you can shove. And Paistasille, of course, the music will affect you on how you will play. If you are listening to relaxing, slow music, you are going to play more passively and more solidly. If you are listening to aggressive music, you are probably going to play more aggressively. It's the same thing that happens when you are driving your car. If you are driving your car and you are listening to an aggressive music, you are driving more aggressively and burning more fuel, getting to your destination. But it's also what are your mistakes generally in your games that you want to... If you are playing too many hands and playing too much aggressively, then relaxing music might be good for your ROI, and if you are usually playing too passively, then having aggressive music there can improve your ROI. So, and of course it depends on how you are going in those games. Like if you are having a horrible situation, then soothing and relaxing music can get your mind out of it. So that's something. But we are now ending our MTT session. I hope there were some ideas for your MTT sessions. Perhaps something on multi-tabling, since this was quite a multi-tabling set this time around. Unfortunately, we didn't find any good caches. There was one final table and a lot of min caches, which isn't that nice. So, and I don't yet know what we are doing next week, so you can post to my feedback thread, and we'll see next week on what will be on the menu. And if you are going to sleep, have a good night, and if you are still playing, may this be a winning night for you. Bye!